I'm around today, guys. Welcome. Thank you very much for coming. My name's Tom Beckett. I'm going to be talking about why and how to be a 1.5 degree nature positive citizen. And the way it's going to work out is we're going to have about half an hour talk, and then we're going to have half an hour discussion, and within groups. Okay. So you're likely here because you feel like you should do something about climate change and nature loss, but you feel powerless. Most people are carrying on as usual. Some are buying their reusable cups or a water bottle, but you know it's just token that the world isn't moving fast enough, and in some ways you perhaps feel quite isolated in your desire to want to tackle this issue. The worst thing is that the actions which you take don't really feel like enough. It's emotionally draining to live sustainably, as it stirs up anger of you being one of the few. You also struggle with doing everything you think you could do to cut your impact on the world. Convenience, culture, money, habits, and even your own friends and family, naysaying on action, make you feel it's not worth it. But what if I told you it's possible to be a 1.5 degree nature positive citizen, that your life could align with global ambitions to stop climate change and reverse nature's decline, and that in living that way it could allow you to feel a deep sense of satisfaction and peace, even though others aren't following suit. And when you started taking action against your plan to reduce your impact, you began to feel that tackling these challenges globally were possible. And there was a sense of hope through that process. And that through you and others taking these steps, enough people could be influenced to create a ripple effect across society, to tipple the system so that it started to work for the advantage of nature and climate. But I bet you don't believe me, that you don't think others will make the change, as all you hear is, the way things work now are convenient, and people don't want to change, or China is not taking action, so why should I? Or this is just a failed cause, there's simply no point, we're just doomed. Or people won't do this without the right incentives, government has to step in for us to be able to tackle this problem. And you may think there's things you don't want to give up, and that living a sustainable life is just a luxury, or you're simply worried about using other technology or changing your habits. You most likely think politics simply won't support it, and with people like Trump in the world, it's pretty hopeless. But what if I told you that the reasons why people deflect their responsibility for climate and nature loss is because they want to avoid feelings of anxiety? I mean, imagine it. We've got something which undermines our entire future. Of course people are going to want to avoid feeling that they need to do something. Of course people want to avoid the anxiety which is related to that, as it threatens our very existence. Everyone really is petrified about these problems and just isn't coping. They'll do everything they can do to deflect that responsibility onto others, so they don't have to face up to the problem themselves. They'll rationalise it, whereby driving is easier, or taking a plane is quicker, or eating a burger is more convenient. That everyone else is doing it, so why shouldn't I? They'll intellectualise it, like saying, well, you know, America's going through a dreadful state, and all the corporates aren't taking action. There's no convenience in it, it's never going to happen, so there's no point in me taking action. Or they displace it, where they decide to get angry at BP or someone who's done something horrendous to the environment. Or they just displace their anger onto their family members and say, put it in the right bin for God's sake. Or we put anxiety-focused thoughts out of mind consciously. That's called suppression. This is when we turn off the radio or don't buy a newspaper when climate change or nature loss is mentioned, because they know, it will just trigger you to feel horrible about the way things are. I mean, that's probably what 50% of people in the room are doing today when we talk about what's going on with the markets because of Trump's tariffs. Or we just become apathetic. We just say it's pointless. Unfortunately, all of these things which we do to avoid anxiety result in inaction, no action. And there's also the challenge of culture. For the last 400 or 500 years, the dominant social paradigm has been nature is an inert physical object which we should be able to remove from for the benefit of an individual and for the economy. That's what's built all of our roads, that's the mentality which has built our whole financial infrastructure, that is the whole mentality which has built us the fabric of society which we live today. So we're actually jarring against this new culture. A new paradigm has to be formed to be able to take people through that transition. That's what's unfortunately tied to all of these things, and when you really want to take action, want to see action taken, the really unfortunate thing is that people believe in what their friends and family tell them more than they actually believe what the experts tell them. And that's what you call folk-led information. Mahatma Gandhi was right when he said, be the change you want to see in the world. It's necessary for us to dig deep, challenge our own beliefs and our assumptions, and then transform. And through that, we can help others. I'm here to tell you it's possible. I've done it. I've measured my impact on the world, I've calculated my emissions reductions and decreases on impact on nature and climate between now and 2030. And I have aligned my life with global goals for nature and climate. My impact on nature will be hard. My impact in comparison with the average UK citizen, which is about 13 tonnes of carbon, is about 3 tonnes of carbon per annum. I've done it because I felt exactly like you. I desperately wanted to tackle this issue. I researched all the solutions, I lobbied hard for change, I implemented solutions for businesses, for governments. I was at the forefront of helping with policy, and I still help on that area. I helped research all the solutions for individuals. I even shared lots of information and tried to encourage people to make change. But inside, I still felt empty. I still felt empty because I didn't know if I was doing enough in my own life. And then I made a plan. And that plan wasn't about doing everything today. It was about planning to do something in 2028 or planning to do something in 2029. And I made that plan, and I costed it, and I reasoned it against all the other things which I needed to do with my life, to bring up my children, to be a good husband, to have good, positive friends and family relationships around me. But I made a plan. And once I'd done that, I was happy. I was at peace. I was at peace because I had a plan to align myself with global goals for nature and climate. And now I can speak to others with confidence about the change because I'm living that experience. And let me tell you, I'm not perfect. I still eat some meat, but generally it's wild. I have butter on my toast, which is dairy. I still haven't moved my bank account, but I know that I'm aligned with global goals. My emissions reductions, my nature footprint, is decreasing enough to make space for nature and ensure that I halve my emissions by 2030. The great thing is my eco-anxiety and my anxiety about the future is under control because I know that I'm doing everything I can do. And now I'm helping others. So how do I help you become a 1.5 degree nature positive citizen? The first step is for you to understand what your why is. Here are 7 whys. And I've got just a mention of this, is that the Earth is beautiful and is our only home. To our knowledge, Earth is the only planet in the known universe with life. The destruction of nature, predominantly through extractive farming practices and radically altering the climate due to burning of fossil fuels, threatens to destroy that life. We have no choice. We have a choice to be part of the destruction of the planet or not. We don't have to be the next David Attenborough, but we can choose to make different decisions about what we take from the world and what we put back. In doing so, we decide to honour the beauty of our planet, genuinely expressing our love for what it provides us. Brian Cox said at COP26, "The planet is the only island of meaning in an ocean of 100 billion suns." Therefore, if we destroy this, we eliminate meaning in our galaxy. So the first reason is the Earth is beautiful and is our only home. The second is we inherit the world and protect it for future generations. Indigenous peoples understand that we are all interconnected, and the choices of one generation inherently affect the next. that we borrow the earth from future generations, that we also, interestingly, proven that humans aren't inherently destructive. Indigenous people now look after 85% of global biodiversity, but they only represent 5% of the human population. So humans aren't inherently destructive. We can genuinely create an environment which is better for our children, and at very least, we could be on the right side of history. Good reason too. Why? The next is every action makes a difference. People say that taking action isn't worthwhile while big corporations or countries continue to destroy the planet. But every ton of carbon has a tangible impact on future generations. The Environment Protection Agency of America conducted an analysis, and so did Lord Stern in the UK. It is estimated for every ton of carbon, we've got 13 of them on average in the UK, there is $190 a year impact to future generations. This is because every single ton of carbon lasts in the atmosphere for 100 years, and it has a measurable impact on global temperatures and weather cycles. Our impact on nature is also tangible. Our biggest footprint on nature is from our food. 3 football fields, 1.3 hectares of land is needed to feed an average Western citizen. But if we eat half the amount of meat and dairy of the average person, you only need 2 football fields to feed you. You can also choose food that comes from farming practices that don't displace nature, helping regenerate our world. And these things directly influence food production. So every decision to reduce your carbon and nature footprint has a direct impact on nature and climate. You might say it's pointless when everyone else is ignoring action, but you would be wrong to say it doesn't make a difference. Number 4, governments won't solve this without societal support. Most governments have signed up to the Paris Climate Accord to keep global temperatures under 1.5 degrees, and the Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, whereby 30% of land is restored for nature. These are the exact frameworks you could align your life to, but the governments are really struggling with them, and they're failing to implement these agreements due to national politics and the way in which private finance is being allocated. And then governments, this is a cycle of inaction, the triangle of inaction, and then governments point at business to tackle the problem. And business points at society to tackle the problem. And society points at both and says we need business, we need convenience, we need governments to kind of support us in our actions, and this is what we call the triangle of inaction. So when we take action, we break this cycle. You are becoming part of breaking that cycle of inaction. You're stimulating business, society, and the government. The 5th reason is action alleviates stress and anxiety. 2/3 of people are worried about climate change, with 1/4 being very worried, to the point of being anxious. Unfortunately, this displacement of our anger and debilitating anxiety makes us less able to tackle the nature and climate crisis. Imagine if the most passionate people who want to tackle this crisis are massively impeded by an ongoing anxiety about that going wrong. Unsurprisingly, psychologists outline the most effective way of tackling this anxiety is to take action on it. For the nature and climate crisis, the most tangible and impactful thing you can do is firstly tackle your own impacts and then work with others to improve theirs. When people understand all the steps they need to take to be on the right side of history in terms of their impact on nature and climate, they can then say, I am doing everything I can. And I can proudly say, I am doing everything I can to tackle this crisis. This then reduces your anxiety and restores belief that we might be able to solve this crisis. The 6th reason, you might want to take action. Stories of action create a ripple effect. The effect of personal action to influence others around us is incredibly important. Edward Bernays, who's the modern founder of public relations and also the nephew of Sigmund Freud, He advised every president from the 1940s to the 1980s and was an incredibly influential figure. He established all his campaigns on the principle that a person's identity, and therefore the values that determine their propensity to take new actions, are mostly influenced by the groups they are part of, their workplace, their gym, the schools, the clubs which you go to. He said the way you change those values and belief is to change the thinking and makeup of those groups. You are all part of several groups, be they your family, your friendship groups, and through your stories, views of these groups can be changed. This is incredibly important at a time where action is stalling because of values and beliefs, which can only be shifted through knowledge sharing, through things which you've done in your own life, through the storytelling of you starting to eat less meat or deciding to bicycle or walk to work. These stories of reality, of things which you can do and how they make you feel, they influence the groups around you. And inherently they influence them because you end up talking about them. And misinformation, and it's really important at this time when misinformation is being readily spread about electric cars being just as damaging as petrol cars, heat pumps not working, wind turbines being driven by electricity and not by wind, and solar energy, which is just as destructive as other forms of energy. These stories that they don't work and the current options are only viable really stick and influence people. They spread like wildfire as people want to confirm their belief that inaction is the only option. So when you're faced with that discussion, when you've got that discussion with a friend or family member who wants to challenge you on these things, they're always fighting for the fact they shouldn't have to take action. And the reason why is because when they decide that they have to take action, they're accepting the anxiety which is associated with that. And therefore, every discussion is trying to deflect those things. There is also a critical mass that is needed to tip the system. It was mentioned earlier. It is known from marketing campaigns that a quarter of the target market is needed to tip the whole market to use a new product. So it might just be that we just need to see 25% electric vehicles on the road, and then the rest of the system and the rest of people will follow simply because there's enough to think that they're credible. So we can go about influencing this by making the change that we want to see in the world. The seventh is that action forges a more meaningful, fulfilling and less expensive life. I mean, it's a little bit more individualistic, but it's important. So taking action not only alleviates your stress, but results in fulfillment. To live on the planet feeling that you've done what you can to make things better for the future is incredibly empowering. I can tell you firsthand. To begin with, it's quite an extensive hobby to learn about all the solutions. And you have to get through all the misinformation, but once you're through it and you've created a plan and you're beginning to take action, you can feel a sense of accomplishment. It's nice to know, for instance, what your footprint on nature and carbon is in comparison with others, and then pull together some actions to improve it. What people forget is that taking action results in lower overall living costs. And this should be expected as we use considerably less energy. But the other thing which people often forget is that we all rush around looking at our phones wanting something new. And actually deciding to take a slower path which aligns with global need means you stop rushing around. You start moving in line with nature. You start working with those cycles. You find a sense of peace within yourself around the trajectory which you're taking. I'd like you to think about, as a very short exercise for us, is to first think about what is your why? So can you please just take a moment to think, what would be your why for taking action on nature and climate? You could write it down, put it on your phone. And can I ask anyone in the room to share what their why might be for taking action? Your grandchildren. Very, very important. 5 and 3. We've got to fight for their future. Anybody else? Animals. Yes. Yes, that is my passion as well. My undergraduate was zoology. I love the flora and fauna of this world. I fight for it. Yes.
Just simple biodiversity.
Biodiversity. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah.
Local problems have global solutions, so we can learn a lot from other countries, different parts of the country, and what other countries improvements make.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. So who might be able to help you on your journey once you've decided to take this? It's important we surround ourselves with people who can support our energy to go further in this space. So who might your friends be? Probably other people in this room, actually. Probably other people who are thinking about things which they can do. But what we actually need to do is to cultivate into our day-to-day life, or even into our monthly cycle or weekly cycle, and meet up with people who are doing similar things to you. And that really helps because they're supportive, because you get to share what your problems are, because you have this opportunity to feel their support in your journey, because this is a very isolating thing to take on. The next, you might want to think about who your enemies are. Can I suggest there are people who say things like, oh, it's great you want to do something for the earth, but I've got to tell you, in order to do that, you've got to be vegan. Or, heat pumps don't work, you know, the electric cars are just as policing as petrol ones. This technology doesn't work. Or I had one the other day which really struck me down. Because I was at school and one of the other parents was there, and I dropped my kids off, and walking back, and I was like, oh, what are you doing for Easter? And she's like, oh, I'm flying to the Maldives with my children. And I was like, okay, that's a long way to go. And she's like, yeah, but it'd be great. And I said, well, you know, it's really unfortunate. If we keep on flying, then the Maldives will be underwater in the next 50 or 60 years. And she said, that's why I'm going now. Yeah. These types of things really knock you back. They make you angry about the fact that people don't want to take action. So beware. There's also things in your day-to-day life, your personal habits, the things you go and pick up on a day-to-day basis, which you might want to change, which are really difficult to change. The personal grief you might feel about the current situation. It really inhibits your ability to take action in your own life. Whenever you think about wanting to do something else, that feeling of grief comes back and really holds you back from taking action. It could be your money or finances. It could be the convenience of getting something rather than something else. It could be calculating your impact and doing the maths. And those enemies will push you back to one of these struggles. You will either say, I'm going to give up entirely. I've done enough, I'm a great person, I'm doing everything I possibly can, there's no point in calculating this, I don't need to align with global goals, I've done everything I can, I'm great. Fine, you can just give up, not plan to do it at all. You could intellectualize, you could say, this is just too much for me to understand. I don't want to learn anything more about this. I'm not willing to go any further. Someone needs to fix this for me, the government needs to fix this for me. Or you could displace your responsibility. You say, oh, look, I'll do this once this happens, or once someone else provides something for me. And I've gone through all of those struggles, particularly in wanting to fix the outside world before I fix myself, and in the journey of understanding. When you come to these challenges, it's important you consider your why. You come back to the reason why you want to do this. Every time I've thought about the challenge of these things, I think about the beauty of the world, and I know I want to fight for it. You will argue with yourself about whether it's that important to measure your impact, or to learn something new about technology, or think about financial planning or in another expenditure, rather than taking the nice holiday you want to take. You will fight with yourself about how important it really is, and whether your small contribution will actually make a difference. And then you will look into yourself, and you'll make a commitment. You will read the article. You'll invite that supplier to come and give you a quote. You'll visit that zero-waste shop, or you will make that vegan meal. And then you'll feel great about yourself. You will realise that it's not that hard. You'll realise in these actions you feel amazing, and that you're not contributing to a worse world. For a moment, you'll stop worrying about the future and believe it's possible for us to change. And you will realise that you've lost that old you, who wanted everything now, who wanted to conform with society, who needed affirmation from all their friends and family. That person who needed to get on a flight because they needed to spend that money, which they earned, and they therefore deserved that holiday. You will realise that you have become something new, someone willing to do something for the planet and for yourself, and that brings you peace. So once you've gone through one of your biggest challenges, the next thing you will do It's to think about anything else within your control you know can make a difference. And I've actually done a lot of work for you. I've got a whole load of resources on my website that can help you at Better Century. .org. You can check it out. It's got tons of actions, over 80 actions which you can take, lots of information. The next thing is to plot your actions over time. You can also use the Better Century to help you through that, through the Net Positive Life app. Offering you for free today, you can use it as a web-based application, and it will give you an inherited UK carbon footprint. And all you need to do is to stop plugging on all the things that you've already done, and then plot the things that you want to do between now and 2030. And once you've got to half the impact over that period, you're in line with global goals for nature and climate. So what do you need to do to make this plan? You need to understand what your footprint is, and then you need to plot this plan. The road back. So, you're going to face setbacks if you decide to go on this journey. There will be points when you decide that moving bank account can wait, or you really need a plastic bottle when you're out travelling because you need to drink, or you're desperate to have a bacon sandwich. What you need to remember is we're not perfect, and that you're doing everything you possibly can. If you have this plan, and you're broadly sticking to it, you know you're doing everything you possibly can, and there are natural weaknesses. And when you have a plan, you're taking the actions you promised, and you understand you don't need to do everything now, you feel more relaxed about the anxiety which is associated with all of these things. You just feel more relaxed. You're at peace with the things which you're doing. But I'm not to say that you won't face difficult moments. And you'll have people who challenge the things which you're doing. But I want you to look at the people who challenge you with compassion. Remember, they're suffering very high degrees of anxiety. I remember going for a walk with my brother, who is now 60, and he just thrashed at me the whole time about why what I was doing was entirely pointless. And I reasoned with him, I worked with him, and then I just told him to stop. And what I realised within that whole conversation, he was suffering deeply, deeply. He was avoiding hugely wanting to engage in this issue, and he wanted to make me do exactly what he was doing. Because he wanted to feel that that was the right thing to do. And he had social confirmation of that. And it's deeply challenging to have those types of conversations. And so you will have some bad days. The news will knock you back. You will learn about some devastating environmental disaster and really question whether it's worth it. The important thing is to remind yourself at these points that you're doing everything you possibly can. You're not in charge of what everyone else does. Your choice is what's in your control. You're doing as much as you possibly can to make change. And that's fundamentally important, because you can't take the responsibility of others onto your shoulders. All you can do is what you can do. And that's important. And then the other thing is, as you go through these difficult moments, I encourage you to meet up with other people who are doing the same thing regularly. I have my monthly People Planet Pint, and even though I'm pretty knowledgeable about this stuff, I feel so well looked after by having other people who just talk about the same problems, the same reflections I have, who give me some sense that there's some camaraderie, because I'm an island in a whole field of people not taking action, and that's really hard. But once you've been through your trials, and you've lived your plan for, say, about a year, you will have become more resilient in your belief for action, and even more resolute. Because you've researched or used many of the solutions, you begin to talk about what you've done. As you don't talk about it with anxiety, which many of us do, but with a resolute feeling of peace, others ask you questions. They relate to you. They ask you what they need to do in order to follow suit. Then you meet people who are happier to challenge, then you meet those which are happier to challenge others on the belief, who don't get angry when they challenge you. And you have those people who get angry at you, but you treat them with compassion. You try and help them. And What happens when you have someone who's really angry and wanting to avoid anxiety, meeting someone who is at peace, is that they start to listen to you. But when you have someone who's really suffering from anxiety meet someone else who's got anxiety on that same issue, you have a clash. You have a natural clash. And those people end up listening to you. You know that that conversation won't result in them taking change immediately, but you know they would have taken something on board from the conversation, from the things which you've done in your life. And then, after a little while, you also realise your friendship group has changed too. You have more people who have made changes like you, but you still debate the pros and cons of actions on various different things with them. But you have people around you who are optimistic about what we can do going forward. And let me tell you, you haven't lost your identity. In fact, every single route to being a 1.5 degree nature positive citizen can be different. Not everyone has to do the same things. You can take different routes to that truth. And there are different routes through measuring those things. And it's a fundamental truth which I want to bring to you, is to understand that you don't have to do certain things, but you can plot your own pathway. And the important thing is it's unique to you. And you want to talk more about it. So what happens is you feel this sense of change, and then you want to talk more about it. You talk to people within your groups. You talk about taking a train to go skiing rather than taking a plane which your friends took, and laughing at them for saying how warm it is at the resort. You talk to them about these funny little things which happen and the joys which you take in the choices which you make. And you feel resolute that it's possible for everyone else. And then what happens if we reach that tipping point? If we get enough people to take this action? Well, after years with living with peace about this, as a 1.5 degree nature positive citizen, you will begin to live at peace with this. You will start seeing real action around you. And let's hope, if we have enough people taking this considered change, that locally you'll see councillors and MPs of every colour start to support net zero and nature positive. You'll see the public discourse starting to become more positive, and new technologies beginning to scale. Everywhere you look, you start seeing inspiring projects rather than the doom and gloom. And I'm quite honoured because I get to see quite a lot of those amazing things. And the naysayers you meet before are becoming less and less. Nature begins to be restored locally. Food at the supermarket becomes plastic free, and from regenerative agricultural practices. And the grid is becoming increasingly renewable. Things become cheaper as a result. Your overheads become more manageable, and you realise the system will never turn back. And that we are globally on course to achieve a net zero and nature positive future. So what I encourage you is to be the hero within this story, to be able to take those decisions yourself. Because at the end of that process, and if all of that happens, you'll be able to say, I am a 1.5 degree nature positive citizen, and I helped make this happen.